Hi, thanks. Like Shanta said, I'm Jim Conlon with IDOT, and going to talk a little bit about this enterprise geocoding solution. And seeing these other presentations beforehand, I was like, man, how do we make geocoding cool? Because really, it's not, right? There's nothing cool about it, but it is a foundation of a lot of the work that we do, especially when we need to locate things on the earth. A little history about this. We built this geocoder a long time ago. I think it's probably been running maybe 5 or 6 years. It was Mark Kincaid when he was at IDOT and the CIO there. He put this effort together and we built it. And a lot of folks have used it, and we'll show you some stats later. So what we'll do a little bit of agenda, kind of geocoding 101 for this group. Probably won't make a lot of sense. I think you'll know a lot about what we're going to talk about. Go through a little bit about traditional geocoding, kind of using that GIS software to do it. Talk a little bit about this different approach and how we took on the geocoding effort. A little bit more about that enterprise geocoding solutions, and then open it up for questions. So kind of geocoding 101, we've had maps for a long, long time, probably as far back as human history. Cartesian coordinate systems, so that some type of coordinate pair or some type of numbering system to define things, places on Earth back in the 1600s. Places have names for a long time, long before we had coordinates. But so geocoding itself, the process of defining real-world coordinates based on something. Typically, I think in our world, it's an address, but it could be a place name, a point of interest. Reverse geocoding. So now we're taking those coordinates. We have a list of coordinates, and we want to get an address. So we pass that in, and then we receive an address back of where those coordinates reside. Address validation. So we're trying to determine there, is it physically deliverable by the U.S. Postal Service? Address standardization. So I think when we all look at a lot of our data sets, they can be misspellings, not formatted correctly. So we're trying to make that address look nice. So some traditional geocoding limitations. I'm going to talk about that traditional geocoding. I'm talking about that ArcMap, street network, geocoding effort. Our reference data, a lot of addresses won't match. Our reference data might not be current. Like our road network might not be current. A lot of errors, like I said, in the addresses. They could be spelling wrong, zip codes are wrong, city names are spelled wrong. We might try to match an invalid address. Our reference data, like I said, it's not standardized. And then we're always going against the street network, and we're assuming that all addresses are present in a given address range and interpolating along that line. Geocodes non-existent addresses. So those kinds of things in that interpolation world, I got maybe a really long piece of road, maybe either in a rural area or an urban area, and maybe there's only a couple houses at the beginning of that road that are actual physical addresses, but that's a 100 block, and maybe there's a 500, 100 to 500. It'll geocode or interpolate along that line a point way down on the street center line when actually there's not a house there, or that's not a valid address. So that's some of the limitations when we have that street data. We're going against that street network. Some other things, if anybody's ever geocoded a large set of, traditionally a large set of records, it can take quite a while. A lot of times you might run into machines shutting down on you, you get halfway through the process, something breaks, so it can take a while. Really, you need a GIS client. There wasn't anything for a non-GIS client. Now, today, again, we have other things. There is Google APIs, and there's other APIs out there that you can call into and make a geocode request. But in that traditional world, again, you need a desktop software and to go in and do that geocoding process. And kind of back to what I was saying earlier about those location inaccuracies. In today's world, we're trying to be more and more accurate. So we might be trying to align with imagery. So if we're landing in the wrong spot, it's not going to look right to us. For environmental studies, certainly rescue and recovery efforts, homeland security stuff, we want to be really accurate. So this kind of gives an outline of the approach we took for this enterprise geocoder. And I want to say that I think many people here are probably from a state agency, but some I know are from counties and other local units of government. This enterprise geocoder is available for free for state agencies. So that's something, again, that IDOT offers and provides. We can give you credentials to log in and use it. But unfortunately for right now, I guess the local units of government, it's not available. The first piece is that kind of a CAS certification, and I'll talk a little bit more about these later. We got a matching reference database, then a custom workflow that you can go through, and then a web service. So virtually any client can call it. So kind of, again, the pieces of the puzzle. So I don't know if folks are familiar with CAS certification, but it's something done by the U.S. Postal Service. So third-party vendors will get themselves CAS certified, and it says that their address matching, or what they do, meets these standards that the USPS has put in place. And the idea originally was to make those addresses when they're putting out mass mailings, to make them accurate. So then they're more efficient for both the mailing services, the people putting out the mass mailing, as well as the postal service itself, to make those things deliverable and not things that would come back undeliverable. So kind of that address standardization piece, we're going to parse out that address that's in your record set and compare it to the latest USPS data. And we do that every 30 days. We're getting an updated data set from our vendor. It's a third-party vendor that we're updating the USPS data, and then we also get that in zip+4 format. Then we do some address validation. So again, we're checking to see, is that address actually a deliverable address? Is it somewhere where a piece of mail or somewhere I can find? So we're doing some correction too as part of that process. So we're renaming things that might be spelled wrong, standardizing the avenue, boulevard, those kinds of things, making them common, using the common abbreviations. And then we do some address updating as well. The next piece is this reference database, which is kind of key, and when I'll show to later, it can make this pretty fast. First, it includes parcel locations. So what I talked about earlier about that interpolation along that piece of road, now if I have two houses down maybe at the southern end or the intersection of road, it's going to put your point there, not interpolated along that road. So it's going to be much more accurate. We still have street center lines with zips and zip code, zip+4s, and this is kind of a hierarchy, city, state, points of interest. So I have multiple sources to match against in this reference database. We update it quarterly. It's compressed, and then it can be represented itself as an Esri locator, and it can be called from Esri clients. The workflow, so the next piece of that is kind of this custom geocoder workflow. So it's a process in place that sends your address request through. It's pretty high performance. I think, traditionally we can run, and we did a test recently, about 170,000 records in about an hour and 10 minutes. And if you've done a lot of geocoding, that's pretty fast. If those addresses, if those addresses were already standardized, so we're running it through this standardizer, we think we could do almost 1 million records in an hour. So it's pretty quick. We do have a hierarchical matching scheme, so the first thing it's going to try to go again to that parcel level. It's not going to use GIS to do that. It's going to tag your records back, so it's going to tell you, hey, this is what I matched you to. I did it at the parcel level, or maybe I had to use the street center line, or maybe I could only go to the zip code level. We can tag your records with administrative boundaries. So we can, once you send an address in, and as part of that request process, you can say, can you give me back legislative districts that record's in? Can you give me back the counties, census school districts? We got several administrative boundaries that'll come back with those records. And then we can do reverse geocoding as well. Then finally, that piece you call, so that web service piece. So it's really, it can be called from any platform. So it's something you do kind of need to write code to call that. You can do it from ArcMap as well, but if you want to do an in line of business application, you will need to call it. It's really up all the time, so it's up 24/7, ready to use, and it can do both batch geocoding and interactive or single line geocoding. So some of the advantages of this enterprise geocoder is it tries to correct those record sets that through that CAS certification process. And I can tell you, we've been working a lot with the ERP implementation. So we're locating through each one of the state agencies. We're helping them locate the vendors, and that's been pretty good for them to clean up a lot of old records that they've had in there for a long time. So those things are getting standardized. Like I said, it's updated. That CAS database is monthly, quarterly for the GIS piece. We've got going against the parcel data. We're not using GIS technology, so that's an advantage. It will help makes it faster and eliminates that interpolation. And then it's again available as a web service, so you can call it. So you can use ArcMap, ArcCatalog, but you don't have to. So some stats. So these are some of the agencies and that DHS number. I don't know if DHS here. It's a big number. So since inception, they've geocoded 238 million records against the service. Talking to Jack earlier, Jack, again, it might be some repeats, might be the same record sometimes over and over, but there are 27 million records. So over the course of time, since inception, we've geocoded almost 300 million records, which is a pretty significant number. And I think this is just an indicator that it does work, and people are getting the results back they need. The second column there, number of records interpolated. So what that indicates is we have this record set, and it wasn't in that matching reference database. It wasn't there yet. So what we do is we do go ahead and do an interpolation, so a more traditional geocode. And if that record comes back with a 100% match, we then add it to the reference database. So the next time that specific address comes in, we have a record for it in the reference database. So the location portal. So with version 2 here, we're going to have this portal. And what I mean by that, with the kind of the version 1 piece, we didn't provide any user interface to geocode records. And there were a couple reasons behind that. One, we didn't want to be in the business of supporting an interface for geocoding, just with some of the errors that might come with it, just the maintenance that might come with it. So I put a note there. We want to kind of discourage as a business for you to continue to do batch geocoding through an interface like this. What we'd really like you to do, and I know what DHS does and some of the other agencies, is this is a line of business. They call that geocoder when an address is entered. So, for example, I think what they do when they have their service center for people looking for services at DHS, they type in an address, they call it, get a location, and then they can find service providers in that area that might be able to help those folks out. So it's part of a workflow. It's part of an application. It's not an Excel spreadsheet or a set of records that they're dumping out every night, going up and trying to upload. So we would really, again, encourage you, if you need to geocode records and you got that within your agency or department, try to work where you try to do it in line. Validate the address at the point of entry rather than add a record at a later time. But kind of a little screenshot there. We do, now we're going to have single addresses, so you'll be able to geocode a single address. There'll be a multi-address. Single address kind of generates, or demonstrates how that line of business geocoder would work, and it's calling the REST API. Multi-address is more appropriate for small batches, so something less than 1,000. And then the batch geocoder is where you're gonna upload a file, but we're gonna send it into a job queue, right? So it's something that's gonna run in the background for a while, and then we're gonna notify you later when that job's done. So rather than doing a demo, I just kind of wanted to give you an idea what the single address or some of these interfaces look look like. So you can add these additional geocoding fields. You can enter that address. So if you had a line of business application, this is similar to what you might do. And then you can pass in parameters to add these additional geocoding fields to your results. Or when I talked about some of the geopolitical fields or the administrative boundaries, these are all the things that you can request. So when you send in that address or that record, if you want one to many of those on that list, you can get them back as part of your result set. And I know for, in public agencies, sometimes that's really important, right? Sometimes we want to know those things about that record, and you can get those back automatically. And then there's some additional correction fields if you want this stuff that the process, so the third-party tool for the address standardization, if you want those back, you can also get those fields back. This is just a little bit again about that, like I said, about that batch geocoder. I'm going to upload a file, and then I can see my current jobs, and then it'll notify me when it's done. So with that, that's all I got. Certainly, if you're interested in accessing the geocoder, you want to know a little more technically about it, we can meet up afterwards and talk about it, but certainly welcome to answer any questions. See, geocoding is fun.
Oh. So are we opening this up to county and local agencies also?
No, right now it's only provided to state agencies.
Okay.
That's who we can give accounts to.
And where do we find that,
Where do you find?
the tool, or do we just
send me an email.
send you the stuff?
Yeah, folks can send an email to me, and I will get you credentials set up, and then you'll have credentials to log into. And we also have a pretty significant help document for the APIs, so the REST API and the SOAP API. We have a help document that outlines how to make those calls and how it works.
Okay, thank you.
I've worked for public health. We wanted to know regarding the web service, is that what type of technology that's being used? Is it WSDL or is it REST API? That's one of the mentions you had. So
It's a REST API.
Okay. Is there any plans to extend it to WSDLs, providing WSDLs?
I guess I don't know. We can talk more later. I can get you in touch
Sure.
with the technical guys and
Sure.
help out with that. That helps.
Thanks.
Yep.
Same public health. How is your geocoding works? Is it going by the street name or by the zip code? Because we see some problems earlier with IDOT version 1. It's not going against the street name. It goes first with the zip code, then goes back to the street name.
Well, it's certainly going to take the whole record itself. Ultimately, it's getting down to a zip plus 6. So it's that partial number, but you're getting a zip plus 4 back. So initially, it's looking, so that reference database has known records that have, it's a parcel data set for an address. So it's looking to see if that record's already been found, and that's the coordinates it's going to turn back. And then if you're going through the standardizer, it's trying to standardize those records. So you're seeing issues with it's falling in the wrong location. Is that what you're noticing, or?
Yeah, it might say this is a North Street, but no, actually we are looking for the South Street. But based on the zip code, it says, okay, this is the South Street. No, it should be the North Street. So
maybe
kind of.
If you have specific records where you're seeing that, we can take a look and see what's happening.
Yeah.
Ray, you can't ask questions.
Actually, I have a comment.
I figured it was a comment.
I thought this would be the appropriate time to share this phrase that I heard at the user conference. Geocoding is the gateway drug to GIS.
Well, there you go. Now Ray's promoting drugs.
What if the parcel that you're looking at is a cemetery? How do you find out who controls that parcel or who gets mail to that parcel?
Well, So you, like, if I want to geocode to a cemetery itself? So the parcel point data we have is both, it's gonna be in the middle of that parcel, the point, or it's gonna be at the road. So there's really 2 points to represent that parcel or that point of interest. We're returning the road.
Address to somebody that takes care of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, that's, I guess to me would be an attribute of that address to find out who takes care of it, because you're right, a lot of times it's not gonna be, you know, a physical house there, or the office isn't gonna be there. So. All right, that's the end of the Gateway Drug Program. So, let me know if you have any questions.